Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Silver the Hedgehog here, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic X Shadow Generations, while we're still playing through Shadow Generations for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC Steam, Nintendo Switch, plus Nintendo Switch 2, thanks to backwards compatibility. So, last time, we essentially did manage to finish off the final stage in the entire main story in Shadow Generations, and same applies with the forms of the final boss as well. And as a result, we somehow managed to learn the final Doom power, which appears to be called Doom Wing, and suffice to say, we did somehow manage to go into not only Radical Highway, both Act 1 and Act 2, but also we did manage to deal with the forms of the final boss in the game, known as Devil Doom / Neo Devil Doom, and so much so we actually got pretty much in a good run. Although, the only time exception is of course Act 2, just because I keep on falling off the stage somehow, and as a result, because of the forms of the collection keys, and you pretty much get the idea of what's to expect. So, anyway, so today, for this video, is that we're about to be continue playing through Shadow Generations, and because of that, we are about to be hitting off to some extra stuff. So because of this though, first things first though, as you probably already expect, about the fact that you do realize there might be a strange object has now appeared once you do manage to beat the game for the first time, and as a result though, we can able to actually just to interact with this thing. But first things first though is about the fact that you do realize about the fact that I'm still missing some of these collection keys, but straight to the point though, I will be back for those specific previous stages, enjoyed at some point in the future, just because at this point in time, we can able to actually guarantee to able to actually finish up the entire Sonic X Shadow Generations Let's Play for specifically the next couple of days ahead, especially concerning for the fact I can't even believe we actually getting pretty close during that specific period, and so much so for the fact that there was that one particular rule we got able to break through. Well, in terms of the forms of how the fact that we are almost nearly at the end of this game, basically, specifically Shadow Generations, at some point during the forms of been a halfway point in February for some time, maybe it could be a possibility we can able to actually finish up the entire aspects of Shadow Generations itself, and so much so that way that gives us a perfect opportunity to able to actually do the next Let's Play in the future, which we can't tell for sure what it is just yet, because, well, straight to the point though is about the fact that we can now able to actually do with some of these other stuff. Like, as I mentioned this before, we are now going to be able to actually doing with the forms of some extra stuff, ranging from finding some more machine parts, and also do with some more challenges in White Space 3D, and as you can tell, we've already did manage able to come across into one of those challenges within no problem whatsoever. But it wasn't until whenever we realized there's even more challenges up ahead, which as a result was all thanks to the forms of that particular different atmosphere where it comes to likely when you're trying to activate that thing in the middle portion of White Space 3D, which then again we'll talk more about that later. So as you can see, we can now able to actually use Doom Wing ability for the sake of the forms of anywhere else, for not only for the levels themselves, but it's also about the fact that you can now use it at any point in white space. So, and like I said before, it's about the fact that depending on how many rings you're going to be gathering through, basically though, your ring count will be depleted in any second. So because of that though, yeah, it feels remarkably similar to Super Sonic or Super Shadow from the likes of not only in Sonic Adventure 2, but alongside with Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06. Especially, again, it's a bit weird about the fact that Super Shadow was not implemented into the gameplay, none whatsoever, because I'm good assured to you because of how the fact that, you know, modern Sonic and classic Sonic are the only ones who can able to actually use the power of the Chaos Emeralds, so to deal with the forms of the Time Meter, you know. And it's especially noticeable concerning for the fact that we have to deal with a different threat after all. So, or should I say, a familiar foe from the likes of Shadow the Hedgehog. So, usually in the 2005 game, as you probably already expect. So, Anyways though, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, here is the 6th of February today, in some cases in 2025 today, and so much so, as promised you guys, I would like to be able to discuss upon the actual future potential for the sake of the forms of not only for our channel, but it's also about the fact that, as you can definitely know, about the fact that we did indeed manage to be able to get ourselves a confirmed time of when does the forms of the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Direct is going to take place. We already know for the fact that it's going to take place on the 2nd of April, of course, but as far as I'm aware, the time itself has been revealed, which, as a result, is going to be due out at some point, and likely in the UK version for about 2 PM, and meanwhile in the European countries, it's more accurately 3 PM, and as far as any other regions, as far as I'm concerned, it's most likely going to take place in the morning. So, as a result though, well, still, we got to wait for a little while until we're able to actually hear more about the forms of Nintendo Switch 2. So, as a result, I'm still really excited about that system. Although, there are some, worries from time to time when it comes to the existence of Nintendo Switch 2, such as, for instance, there is that particular very strange connection port whenever you're trying to able to actually connect your magnetic Joy-Cons to the actual system itself. Well, some people might be worried about the fact that if that particular connector thing might feel a bit flimsy after a while. Well, let's just not get our hopes up at this point just yet, because aside from all that stuff though, that again, we are just about 2 months away until that particular Nintendo Direct for Nintendo Switch 2 will be revealed, alongside with some bunch of games they'll show us at some point, so, as well as several features that we haven't exactly heard about yet, up until, you know what I mean. So for the time being though, let's discuss upon the forms of another topics at this point, and so much so, one of those games in particular, called Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, apparently though, that game has now managed to sell for about 1.3 million units in its first year of release. So, even though sadly, this figure was not enough for Ubisoft, and as far as I'm aware, who said failed to meet the company's internal expectations. So, yeah, it was originally going to be able to be planned for a sequel to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, but it was planned, but then was canned. So, I'm guessing it's probably because they don't have enough money for it, for able to be potentially trying to plan for a sequel of that particular game in mind. So, although, mind you, it's hard for me to explain, because I know for a fact that it has been about a couple of days ago since we've last mentioned something related to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown as a game itself. So, anyway, and there's also another thing else worth noting for, is about the fact that recently though, Super Mario World has now been added to the Nintendo Music app. So, pretty cool though, and I'm really hoping about the fact that we can able to actually get even more Mario soundtracks enjoying the likes of the Nintendo Music app, such as, for instance though, we might able to actually see Super Mario Sunshine at some point, and Super Mario Galaxy 2, and Super Mario 3D Land, and even Super Mario 3D World, or even Bowser's Fury for that matter, but time will tell, time will definitely tell. So, and meanwhile, on the subject when it comes to the actual sales units, it looks like, so far, Mega Man 11 has now surpassed 2 million copies sold. So yeah, that's actually pretty good, even though, mind you, about the fact it's been a very long time since we've last heard about anything for classic Mega Man era, because, again, it's been like 6 years ago since when Mega Man 11 did first came out in 2018, so, and ever since then we haven't exactly heard about anything for classic Mega Man since. Well, technically, if you want to count with the forms of Game Boy games, of Mega Man games have now been accessible for the Nintendo Switch Online subscription services, but aside from brand new games for the time, like brand new entries of the forms of certain franchises, well, I honestly have no idea what the heck has happened to the forms of certain Mega Man franchise as far as I'm aware. So, but either way though, Yeah, let's talk about the forms of the most important aspect about the forms of today's discussion, and better late than never, I suppose, when it comes to able to actually try to mention about this right now, actually. And that's what it appears to be for the fact that, yes, indeed, after the events of 2 days ago about the fact that the actual Nintendo's financial meeting reports that obviously, though, for what I can tell, Nintendo Switch has now reached for about 150.86 million units sold. And my goodness, it was a pretty good number, I might add. Although, I'm pretty concerned about the fact that it's almost gone pretty close to not only the Nintendo DS sales units, but alongside with the forms of the PlayStation 2 itself as well. And no matter what though, kind of think about it, that Nintendo Switch is still doing really dang well, especially thanks to the forms of the holiday season, and on top of all that stuff though, with all these bundles they somehow include, as to be expected. And not only that though, about the fact that we actually got ourselves, you know, a new Mario Party game, which turns out to be Super Mario Party Jamboree, which, truth be told, that game is actually doing quite well. During the forms within the first couple of weeks or so, and it's especially noticeable concerning for the fact that Super Mario Party Jamboree, as for right now anyway, is now the serious fast-selling games, or faster-selling games. So, yeah, it seems pretty cool, especially concerning for the fact that Super Mario Party Jamboree has filled to the brim with a lot of content, ranging from, you know what I mean, 7 boards and 112 mini-games total, and even 22 playable characters. Online ability or online capabilities is already there from the start, much like the forms of Superstars. And let's just say, for the fact that no matter what though, by the time once we make our way to potentially the final financial meeting for Nintendo Switch 1, just before we move on to Nintendo Switch 2 or something like that, obviously though, we might able to actually hear for the fact that Super Mario Party Jamboree were able to actually easily guaranteed able to do pretty dang well for the actual sales numbers. Although, fundamentally speaking, I was about the fact that I think that game was now the 5th Mario Party game is actually doing really dang well in terms of sales numbers, followed by not only Mario Party 8, Mario Party DS, Mario Party Superstars, and of course, not to mention though, the original Super Mario Party, despite with some questionable choices like smaller boards, and even requires you to force to use Joy-Con controllers at all times, which you probably get the idea what I'm talking about. So, anyways though, yeah, it is pretty incredible to able to know that, you know, Nintendo Switch 1 is actually doing fantastically well, and it's especially noticeable that several games have been updated for the actual sales numbers too, ranging from, well, let's just say, those familiar games that we already know about has been updated for the actual sales numbers, but 2 of those other games are actually brand new. So as a result though, yeah, concerning for the fact that the actual update comes from by the end of 2024, specifically December 31st in 2024. So let's run down the list. In terms of the forms of certain game library, they did manage to able to have updated sales units. So, for instance, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still on top, which, as a result, that game is now on 67.35 million copies sold. So, again, thanks to the forms of DLC bundles, or any other Nintendo Switch bundles, including OLED version as well, and yeah, it's doing remarkably well at the end. So, and meanwhile, we actually still have Animal Crossing New Horizons. That game is now on 47.44 million copies sold, concerning for the fact that by that time until next month, that game is going to be celebrating its 5th anniversary of the game's release of Animal Crossing New Horizons, despite the fact that it did came out during the lockdown year. So, or, and for that matter, the worst time of the year we've been able to actually experience from. So, anyway, next up we have is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, aka Smash Bros. Special, for those of you who lived in Japan. That game is now on 35.88 million copies sold, so it's doing really dang well, thanks to DLC, and not to mention though, it's pretty much an ultimate fighting game of course. So, anyway, Next up we have is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's now on to 32.62 million copies sold, specifically the Switch version, because, well, straight to the point though, I don't think it's possible we can able to actually hear more about the Wii U version anymore, just because, you know, the Wii U itself is basically dead. So, ranging from not only for its, it's hard for me to explain because I haven't exactly been on my Wii U for quite some time, but regardless of everything else though, it's about the fact that, yeah, Breath of the Wild is still doing really fantastically well. And on the subject for that matter though, we also have Super Mario Odyssey. I believe that game is now on to 29.4 million copies sold. So yeah, it's doing really well too. And we are still really hoping for the fact that with the next 3D Mario game is going to be on its way for specifically Nintendo Switch 2, just in case no matter what though is about the fact that we can pretty much guarantee for the fact that the majority of the 3D Mario games is going to be most likely going into one console per generation or something like that. Or, again, hard for me to talk about this, especially concerning for the fact that I know for certain for one thing that I just seriously cannot wait for Nintendo Switch 2 to be able to actually gather some more information, and in terms of games library though, I am still very curious. So, anyways though, next up we have is Pokemon Sword/Shield, in some cases Generation 8. That game is now on to 26.60 million copies sold. And next up we have is Pokemon Scarlet/Violet, in some cases Generation 9. Yeah, those two games combined is now on to 26.38 million copies sold. So it's like a neck-to-neck between both of those generations of the most recent Pokemon games during that time. So I'm really begging for the fact that once we make our way to the new year, which is 2026, maybe there might be a possibility we might able to actually hear more about Generation 10 of Pokemon franchise. I'm not exactly entirely sure about this just yet though. I mean, mind you though, it's about the fact that we're still really waiting for Nintendo Switch 2 once that's going to be arriving. So, anyway, next up we have is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I believe that game is now on to 21.55 million copies sold, so it's almost catching up. So yeah, that's pretty fantastic. And yeah, no surprise there that the original Super Mario Party was still onto its top 10 list for the best-selling Nintendo Switch games. And I believe Super Mario Party was now on to 21.10 million copies sold. So, gee, no wonder why that game is doing super duper well, despite the fact that we already got another set of Mario Party games on the Switch, including the latest one, which we'll discuss more about that in a second. So, next up we have is New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, not surprising there, and as a result, that particular game is now sold for about 18.6 million copies sold. So yeah, it's doing remarkably well, and it's actually way more than the forms of how it does it back on the Wii U version, at least in some aspects. So, anyway, next up we have is Nintendo Switch Sports. I believe that game is now sold for about 15.74 million copies sold, despite the fact I still haven't got the game of mine. Well, this is mainly because, as far as I'm aware though, I don't normally use Joy-Cons for experiencing Nintendo Switch games, I have to be honest here, apart from a couple of exceptions, which appears to be both Super Mario Party and WarioWare Move It, just because those two games in particular does not have handheld capabilities. So, yeah, I guess that makes it obvious. So, and next up we have is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Yeah, it has been quite some time since we last heard about the forms of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, you know, with the newest 2D Mario game for the time. And that game is now, got, I should say, 15.51 million copies sold. So yeah, it's doing remarkably well. Although, it's almost barely trying to catch up towards with the forms of New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, but I can assure to you that the 2D Mario games up to that point with Nintendo Switch 1 is doing really dang well. So, anyways, next up we have is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I believe that game is now sold for about 3.40 million copies sold, even though it's doing decently well, although nowhere near as much as the forms of how it does it on the superior The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, just because those two games are massive. Although as far as Echoes of Wisdom, as far as I'm concerned, is doing remarkably well, at least as far as I do notice. So, anyway, next up we have is Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake, and I believe that game is now on to 2.6 million copies sold, so it's doing really dang good. Especially I'm really hoping for the fact that that game will surpass Paper Mario The Origami King in terms of sales numbers. I mean, time will tell though. I suppose we'll have to wait and find out, and during that some point until May in 2025. So yeah, I guess that time will have to tell. So anyways though, and next up we have is Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's gonna be increasing that much in terms of sales numbers for Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, and it may look like that game is now on to 1.80 million copies sold, so it's not by much, but two new games have been added to the list, such as, for instance, Super Mario Party Jamboree is now on to 6.17 million copies sold, so it's doing remarkably well. And surprisingly enough, lastly, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, we totally see this coming, and as a result, Mario Luigi Brothership has now sold for about 1.84 million copies sold, so it's doing decently well, but nowhere near as much compared to the forms of how it does it on, well, as I say, Super Mario Party Jamboree, because, you know, Super Mario Party Jamboree was doing really remarkable well, or should I say, it's doing really well. In terms of the forms of the actual sales numbers, you know. But I digress. So, and also, as far as I'm aware, that two of those games in particular, which appears to be Pokemon Legends ZA, as well as Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, I think they still stated about the fact that those two games in particular will still going to be releasing during the forms of this year, for the likes of 2025, but then again though, it's currently unknown of which specific month or specific date that's going to be onto, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess, especially concerning for the fact that at this point in time, that, again, I'm just incredibly excited for Nintendo Switch 2 right now, although, come to think about it though, is about the fact that I'm still really hoping for the fact that they'll try to fix the most annoying issue in terms of utilizing with those Joy-Cons on Switch 1. That is, of course, Joy-Con drift. So, yeah, I'm really hoping they'll try to fix that issue for Switch 2. And, yeah, we shall see what happens in due time. So, anyways, though, also, another thing else I would like to mention about this as well, speaking of which, in terms of the forms of May releases, as far as I'm aware, that it might be a little bit more convenient than that, is that there's a new trailer just came up for the likes of Capcom Fighting Collection 2. I believe that game is now going to be coming out at some point in May, specifically 16th of May in 2025 for Nintendo Switch, and maybe other systems as well, although I may be wrong, but regardless of anything else though, yeah, that seems pretty cool and everything. And on the subject for that matter though, someone said in the comments down below, or should I say, someone said in the comments during the forms of in the past few parts ago, obviously though, there's going to be some unfortunate news is about to happen for the likes of the forms of the Muppet fans, which I do know for certain for one thing in mind, that particular little thing called Muppet Vision 3D, usually kind of thinking about it though, you simply trying to able to wear 3D glasses or something like that. I may be wrong, but what I've noticed on the article that someone said in the comments, basically though, about the fact that they've heard about the fact that it's going to be closing down, well, kind of thinking about it, with Muppet Vision 3D is about to be closing down this summer for not just the Monsters Inc. Attraction, but also with other Walt Disney World projects, and so much so that according to the internet resources, Muppet Vision 3D will permanently be closing down until 8th of June. Oh boy. For specifically in this year, so yeah, it's kind of unfortunate though, especially concerning for the fact that, well, again, it's hard for me to talk about that particular subject though, because I have already experienced the forms of Disneyland before in somewhere in America, but regardless of such though, is about the fact I always have a good time with it though, but nowhere near as much compared to the forms of how it does and how awesome the Super Nintendo world is to me. There's also worth noting for the sake of time too, that we've only got about approximately 3 months left until the Epic Universe is going to be opening up soon, for not only for the sake of the forms of other attractions, but also with Super Nintendo World in Orlando for the likes of Influenda. So, yeah, I'm very curious to check that place out, but I'm probably not going to go there for this year, but I will do it for next year for sure, for 2026. So, just because, as far as 2025 is concerned, we're going to have to save up for Nintendo Switch 2 once that's going to be releasing. So, anyways though, also, another thing else is worth noting for is about the fact that I have no idea why that usually for the sake of the forms of the box office department, for Japan anyway, when it comes to the release of Sonic X Shadow Tokyo Mission, I did manage to find out the actual results of it though. Basically though, it's about the fact that Sonic Movie 3, or Sonic X Shadow Tokyo Mission, gets off in a damn slow start in Japan with, let's just say, for a grand total of $180,000 on the opening day, approximately, let's just say, $0.9 million opening weekend, upcoming, and as a result, it's gonna, well, it's hard for me to talk about this, because, obviously, though, I still managed to enjoy the film, of course, but I just have no words to say of how come that Japan doesn't seem to like Sonic anymore, which, it's something. I have no idea. But anyway, so, and there's also another thing else I would like to point out as well, that we're about to be getting ourselves the new LEGO set coming up for specifically the upcoming movie until specifically in April. That's what appears to be LEGO a Minecraft movie, or should I say Minecraft movie LEGO, which, kind of thinking about it though, it's pretty much standard as it sounds. So, anyways, and I suppose the final thing I want to discuss upon before you're able to actually talk about the hard mode challenges in White Space 3D, because as you can tell, that I've managed to able to activate something, which as a result, yeah, we've already experienced the environments like this, but I'm sure enough though, it's about the fact that one thing I totally forgot to mention about is that, as you couldn't tell, before you dive into the final stage in the game, which is of course Radical Highway, alongside with the forms of Devil Doom as a final boss battle, it is still possible you can able to actually explore around the darker version of White Space 3D, and so much so you can able to actually participating in for not only hard mode for the likes of boss battles, but as well as challenge acts, as well as White Space 3D challenges for the sake of trying to able to try to go for the entire challenges in the most difficult way imaginable. Like, for instance though, in this challenge right here, we need to grab 200 rings this time, so it's going to be likely a double amount compared to the forms of how it does it from previously, because as far as I'm aware, we only need to grab for about 100 rings in order to able to complete the challenge. Now I'm sure enough though, there might be still some more concept arts we need to able to unlock somehow, and so much so, I don't think it's possible for me to able to actually get a single rainbow rank during the forms of this whole process. So, because as a result though, it's about the fact that yes, if you're probably wondering, you cannot use Chaos Control when it comes to likely trying to go for the difficult variants of certain challenges, mainly with the timer ones, because as far as I'm aware though, yeah, we have to go through 8 of these things as opposed to like, I don't know, 5 of these things. So, and it's also worth noting for too is about the fact that it's now going to be located on some of these very tricky spots. So yeah, I might as well give that one a pass for the time being. So yeah, let's just focusing on this particular challenge from now on. So like for instance, grabbing most of these rings. So yeah, that should be pretty swell. So, and I suppose, yeah, let's get on to the forms of the final topic at this point, and that's what appears to be that, yes, Blossom Amy is definitely coming to, not only Sonic Dash, but alongside with the forms of Sonic Forces Speed Battle mobile game as well. So, hopefully though, I should be able to try to unlock her somehow with the forms of Chinese culture. So, again, it's pretty tricky to tell. And it's also worth noting for too, that as soon as you start things off with the forms of that particular white space challenges, if you couldn't tell, the background music you're going to be hearing is actually based off from the instrumental version of All Hail Shadow Crush 40 version, because obviously though I can see why. There are a lot of players out there do prefer Crush 40 version of the All Hail Shadow theme from Sonic 06, as opposed to the forms of how it does it on Shadow the Hedgehog version. So, yeah, because of the forms of how the fact that how iconic Crush 40 is to us. So, and then as soon as when the actual time itself just goes completely ticked off, or likely, for instance, if you reach for about 10 seconds left syndrome, basically though, it plays the actual music based off from when you're trying to activate Chaos Control in Shadow the Hedgehog, whenever you're trying to able to zip bypassing through a lot of obstacles and all that stuff. So, relatively speaking because you have to be super duper quick about it, and it's also worth knowing for too, it is so easy to rank up as many of those rings as you could to able to actually try to guarantee to able to actually turn into Doomwing Shadow, and suffice to say though, it's so satisfying whenever you do manage to able to try to, you know, collect a lot of rings if you try to able to skip certain routes and even take multiple shortcuts, and I somehow failed that challenge. So, yeah, I can see why that the time challenge ones, specifically whenever you try to grab those clocks, is going to be pretty difficult, especially because you have to be quick about it, and not to mention though is about the fact that if you couldn't tell already, that every time if you do manage to boost, when you do manage to have yourselves Doom Wings with you, obviously though is about the fact that if you boost wisely, it will drain for a bit, but then it just somehow came back once you stop boosting. So no matter what though, basically you do have your chance to able to actually have yourselves a rechargeable boosting feature. So much so for the fact that will come in very handy if you try to go into some situations where basically though, if you almost guaranteed able to actually almost low on time, and so much so, like I said before, there's no such thing as Chaos Control in that state. So anyway, so let's go and grab some more rings here, so that way it is so easy to able to make our way to a maximum of 999 rings, as much as we possibly could have. So, and by the way, what really happens if you dare manage to able to fall off in terms of the forms of 3D white space, because unlike the forms of how it does it in Sonic Generations, I don't think it's possible you can't die in the forms of in 2D white space in Sonic Generations. Whilst in Shadow Generations, it is definitely possible you can able to actually fall off the entirety of the environment of 3D white space in Shadow Generations. And to put it simply though, is about the fact that you obviously hear Shadows scream, and so much so for the fact that you lose all of your rings, and it actually respawns you back to where you came from. So yeah, that's the only thing we can probably describe about it. Although, luckily for us though, unlike the forms of how it does it in, let's just say, both in Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces. Come on! I was so close! Jeez. Sometimes, you know, you always have to make sure you need to do this perfectly, because otherwise though, if you mess up quite a few times, so much so for the fact that there won't be a guarantee for you to do a quick, well, not so much quick, but it's just that you always have to rely on timing involved. So, hopefully though, we can able to try this again, which we really guaranteed by that. So, anyway, let's discuss upon the forms of, something like a final thing we want to discuss upon, actually, is that we already mentioned about the fact that, obviously, at this point in time, until on, let's just say, the 25th of March in, 2025, that, obviously, though, is about the fact that, specifically in Japan, that, obviously, though, is about the fact that they're no longer going to be using, credit cards, and even with, PayPal stuff, for the sake of not only Nintendo eShop, but alongside with my Nintendo Store as well for Japan. And relatively speaking, you know, it did say on the article, saying about the fact that thank you very much for your continued producement or anything else like that for our products. In order to prevent fundamentally news or something like that. I do apologize for that particular tongue twist in the end, folks, when it comes to certain words I would like to describe, but It's just that there are a couple of times with some words I haven't exactly heard of, so either way. The Nintendo eShop and my Nintendo Store for Japan will stop accepting credit cards issued overseas and PayPal accounts opened overseas from Tuesday, March 25th of 2025. So, yeah, it did say on the article, on that tiny box there, and it stated this. Payment methods that will no longer be available, like credit card issued overseas and PayPal accounts opened overseas, and date of unbillability is going to be on, like I said this earlier, 25th of March in Tuesday in 2025. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure if that will cause the same thing for the sake of the English version, but again, time will tell though, especially concerning for the fact that at this point in time, that I'm just, well, got nothing else to add. So, anyways though, so, yeah, I got nothing else to say, because that's as far as I can talk about it. Although, apart from the fact that I, unfortunately, going back onto Mario Kart Tour again, although I've luckily enough, managed to get myself my next Mii Racing suit, and this time what appears to be a brown color, because as far as I'm aware, we somehow going back into Exploration Tour again, ever since in last year in 2024, and suffice to say though, there's only one thing I can probably say this right from the get-go, that I basically just, you know, well, imagine if the new Mario Kart game for Nintendo Switch 2 will be releasing, and I'm sure enough that once that game arrives, I am surely able to be glad to not to touch upon Mario Kart Tour ever again if the next Mario Kart game is going to be a thing. So, oh geez, that was a definition of the close call, because imagine if the time runs out, obviously though I'll have to retry that particular challenge again. So, but luckily though, it only took me about one attempt when it comes to able to try to go for that challenge. So, yeah, I guess that's all I can really think about it. And also I just realized there might be some chests on top of the vaults of certain palaces at one point. So, but then again, no, let's not get ahead of ourselves to this point right now in terms of opening up treasure chests and all that stuff, because that can wait. So, but at least luckily though, if you couldn't tell already, that if you do manage to able to use Doom Wings, if you couldn't tell, then like I said before, you're able to become invincible for if you dare touch the forms of those little spiky balls and stuff like that. Obviously though, you probably not gonna get hit because you get your invincibility. So not sure it's something. So
all too easy.
At least I got a rainbow rank on this challenge, so yeah, that's something. So I'm guessing that might be the only time I can able to actually achieve the rainbow rank when it comes to collecting a certain amount of rings in taking place in Kingdom Valley. So yeah, I guess that makes it totally obvious. So, but yeah, nothing else I can talk about aside from the fact that I've already mentioned about the updated game sales, and I'm still very surprised about the fact that Mario Luigi Brothership is doing decently well, but compared to Super Mario Party Jamboree, it's doing really well, especially concerning for the fact that, well, I can totally see why, that Super Mario Party Jamboree did manage to receive some very good reviews out there. I mean, sure, there are some issues I have with the game, but that'll be a topic once we're able to dive into that Let's Play at some point in the future, so, but not now. So with that being said, folks, it's time we get endings off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic X Shadow Generations. While we're still playing through Shadow Generations, is that, well, suffice to say, we can now able to participating in going into the hard mode challenge acts. So this will be interesting. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.